Hello, I'm Michael Bennett, a Sydney-based historian working with Aboriginal communities in New South Wales on native title claims and genealogy.
And I'm Paul Irish, also a historian based in Sydney, working with Aboriginal communities to document family and community history. In this video, we'd like to show you one of the very special collections that's held within the State Library of New South Wales in Sydney. The State Library has an enormous range of material that relates to Aboriginal people and can be very useful for communities to research family history and community history. And today, Michael, you're heading up to the State Library to have a look at the Tindale Genealogies.
Yes, I'm heading up to the Mitchell wing of the State Library to meet with Indigenous Service Librarians Melissa Jackson and Ronald Briggs, who are going to talk a lot more about the Tindale records. Well, thank you, Ronald and Melissa, to welcoming us here to the State Library today to have a look at the records of Dorman Tindale that the library holds. I thought I'd just start by asking what types of records, Tindale records, does the library have?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, we call them the Tindale Genealogies.
Yes.
Genealogies collected by an anthropologist, South Australian anthropologist from South Australia in New South Wales in 1938. He went around to about nine different communities, interviewing people, talking to them, and writing down basically the community's family histories on field notes. He was also taking photographs and lovely portraits of people who were living on the reserve at the time as well. And just to give you an example, this, for example, is my great grandmother.
Yes.
This photograph, it tells us, was taken 25th of July, 1938, at Boggabilla.
Mm-hmm.
And then we go to a genealogical sheet.
Yes.
That's basically he was sitting down talking to people and writing down the information, the family history information that people were providing him. And we can see here that my great-grandmother is mentioned here.
Okay. Yes.
And lists her children, grandchildren, etc. So it's a really... And it goes back, this one goes back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 generations recorded on one sheet for my particular family. So it's a wonderful resource for communities that was recorded by a white anthropologist in 1938.
So, my understanding that Tindale wasn't a family historian himself. He was an anthropologist, as you mentioned. He had a particular purpose in recording his information, so that there's other quite confronting personal information that can be recorded on the genealogies as well, relating to the heritage and non-Aboriginal heritage as well.
Yes, yeah. It was an anthropological survey of Aboriginal people. So he didn't, and he also didn't do any background checks or birth, death or marriage records or information as well. So this was an oral tradition, an oral reckoning of who the people were in families. So sometimes the information isn't correct. And sometimes, and that was done deliberately so that government couldn't find whether you had children or not.
Okay.
So sometimes it's misleading information, but by and large, it's all true and correct.
People today often find it confronting, the language that Tindale uses, because it's not used these days.
Yeah.
He was interested in measuring the extent to which Aboriginal people were being absorbed into white society. He was an assimilationist basically, but he was measuring caste. So we've got full blood, half caste, quarter caste, octoroon. All of that type of language is used on the sheets, which, as I said, people often find confronting today. We haven't rendered this into a proper chart, that we can, people can email or send each other. So people are accessing the copies of the original field notes that Tindale took. And as I said, it's just sometimes the wordage used is not words that we would use today necessarily.
So, Melissa, obviously with the sensitivities of the information, we can't show actual genealogical sheets from Tindale on the screen, but we've done a mock-up of one of the sheets just to give the community an idea about what type of information they can expect when they're looking at the Tindale genealogies that you provide via the library. So, so we can see here that we've got sort of Sarah Smith as the central person here on the genealogy. I was wondering if you'd like to talk a little bit some of the information that can potentially be recorded. Sarah Smith's not an actual person.
This is a really good mock-up. This is a really good representation of what a Tindale genealogy would look like. It has for us a sheet number, a community, and the date when the genealogies were recorded, and that can be really interesting for age purposes to get the age of the person. So you have here because we mentioned earlier about the purpose of Tyndale's genealogies were to get sort of ethnographic information about people. So we have the white person who married and I'm using horrible terms here, a full-blood person.
That's what that FB
So that's what that FB stands for. And fortunately on this sheet, you've got the totem, and she's a fish person, a fish woman, who then gives that to her daughter, Sarah Smith.
Yes, fish is there.
And fish is there, and she's Nyamba. So we have a language group and we have a moiety. So that's a really good mock-up.
Yes.
But also on Sarah's name, you've got an N number, and that is a negative number, and it relates to the photo of her. So from here, I get lots of information to do family history. Also on this sheet, she had a relationship. She was married to Fred Bloggs, but unfortunately that relationship broke up, and so they're divorced, and we can see that in the symbol of an equal sign that has a slash through it. So that's over, finished. But she had a number of children to Freddie Bloggs, and so they're all mentioned here. And on the other side of these lines are the children that she had to her second marriage, a much happier marriage, of course, and she had a couple of more children, and they are indicated by the other side of the two lines. And
there's two vertical lines there, sort of that dividing mark.
That's the dividing mark.
For the children.
Another good aspect of your mock-up is it's Brewarrina, but it says that John Jones, her second husband, comes from Burke. Okay. So that gives us another avenue, another place to look for the Joneses of Burke. They're related to them.
Yes.
And also it has the young Sammy. He's 6. Nellie, she's 4, and Billy is 2.
Yes.
So in 1938, they were 2 years old, and we can look in other sources to find that type of BDM information.
Yeah, there might be certificates of marriage or relating to those children.
Another one, really good aspect of, it's a sad one, but young Jimmy, James Bloggs, he's dead.
He passed away.
He has already passed away at this stage, so we've again got some date ranges, hard and fast date ranges for finding James.
Yes. So the sheet we're looking at today is a bit simplified, but the actual Tindale sheets can be full of hundreds of names and lines going everywhere, showing connection.
Oh yes,
annotations.
They are intense to actually. Yes. Some of the really intense ones are really difficult because there's ... So that doesn't relate to this person, but it relates to their relative right up in the other corner. Sometimes it's written so small that you have to get a magnifying glass out.
Yes.
And it's just really, they can be really hard to read. Sometimes you get beautiful ones like this, it's laid out perfectly.
Yes.
But others, you just really have to, it takes a lot of patience to try and find the connections.
Photographs were most likely taken by his colleague who travelled around New South Wales with Tindale. His name was
Birdsall.
Birdsall, Mr. Birdsall, and they're wonderful black and white photographs taken in 1938 on the reserve. And the great thing about it is we know from the genealogical sheets the date that the photograph was taken. We know that he recorded the age of the person in the photograph. It was an anthropological expedition, we have to keep that in mind. So we've got wonderful full-on face portraits, but the accompanying portrait is a profile, sometimes or often, with a measuring stick, telling us the size of the person's skull, which is interesting in itself, but quite confronting. We usually just show the nice frontal portrait to family historians when they come in to have a look at them.
And how do the community go about getting access or finding out whether they might have a family member recorded in Tindale's genealogies?
There's an index. There's an online index to this material,
Okay.
and so it's family named by community. So I then have a look at the sheets, and then they give me a little bit of a family history. And I verified that the family that they are speaking about are on the actual sheets.
Yes.
And then I have it in digital form. I can just then email it off
Wow.
to the people. And I also have the photographs as well, if there's a photograph of the person. But there are very strict access directions to the material. People just can't come in and have a look at them and consult them. They have to be a family member. They have to be mentioned on the sheet before it is then shared with them.
Yeah. And that's not a rule. That's not our library's rule. These are actually copies from the originals that are kept at the South Australian Museum in Adelaide. Mm-hmm. We made copies of these about 15, 20 years ago, and their access direction was that people who want access to these and copies of these should get permission, should either be a family member of the persons or the families included in the genealogies, or get permission from the family themselves, or sometimes a community organisation such as the Land Council, before they come into the library to have a look at the copied sheets.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And generally, we won't copy the whole community sheets. We will only copy one sheet and give it, or the sheets that are relative or to the person.
Just to their family.
Just to their family. So, just one sheet, 2 sheets, and the images.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is there a cost for the community if they're making an application?
No.
Generally not.
No, generally not. And we give an hour's worth of free research so that I can do that verification that the family that's mentioned is on the actual genealogy. Electronically, it's free. So
yes.
There you go.
Wow.
And even if I need to make a photocopy, not a problem.
Well, it's a phenomenal collection. It's a great service that the library offers to the community. So, Ronald and Melissa, thank you for joining us today to talk about the Tindale collection. Thank you.
Thank you.